12 years ago, on an ordinary Friday morning, I left for work like usual, leaving my wife, Rachel, and our kids at home. Paul was 5 and little Isabella was just 2. Our routine was well established. I'd leave early, and Rachel would stay with the kids. No matter how busy my day was, I'd always find the energy to play with them when I got home. I can still hear their laughter and excited squeals as soon as I reached the gate. It felt like my arrival was the highlight of their day, and in many ways it was the highlight of mine too. Sometimes, as soon as I walked through the door, Rachel would start complaining. It was always about the house, the mess, or the endless chores. I'd listen and try to help however I could, but none of those daily grievances could have prepared me for what was coming. One evening, I got home a little later than usual. It was pouring rain, and the house was eerily quiet. No laughter, no TV noise, no sounds of children playing. First, I thought maybe they're asleep. Paul and Isabella were indeed asleep. But when I walked into our bedroom, the only thing waiting for me was a note on my pillow. Rachel's words cut deeper than anything I'd ever felt before.
I can't do this anymore. I can't take care of the kids or this house. I wasn't made for this. I know you're an amazing father, but I just don't see myself as a mother. I need to follow my own path. I hope you and the kids will be okay.
I collapsed onto the bed and cried, overwhelmed by a sense of emptiness and despair. The woman I had spent a decade of my life with was gone. Not even our children were enough to make her stay. Over the following days, I replayed every moment in my mind, trying to understand where I had gone wrong. But the truth is, some questions never have answers. The days that followed were pure chaos. Paul, with his innocent 5-year-old curiosity, kept asking where his mom was. Every day, I lied and told him she was traveling. A cowardly excuse, but it was all I could come up with at the time. Isabella was too young to fully grasp what was happening, but even she could sense the void Rachel had left behind. When I finally told Paul the truth, he cried in a way I'll never forget. It wasn't the tears of a little boy. It was the kind of heartbreak that shatters innocence. Seeing the pain in his eyes made me promise to myself that I would do everything in my power to make up for what he had lost. Over time, we managed to settle into a new normal. I had to learn how to be both a father and a mother, which, to be honest, was the hardest thing I've ever done. Friends and family helped however they could, but most of the weight fell on my shoulders. By the time Paul turned 10, he was more mature than most kids his age, which was a blessing. Isabella, on the other hand, had few memories of her mom. Occasionally, she'd ask innocent but heartbreaking questions like, "Why doesn't she love me?" Or, "Did I do something wrong?" Those moments crushed me, but I always reassured her that it wasn't her fault. For years later, when I finally felt like I'd pieced my life back together, I met Mary. It wasn't a grand, romantic encounter, just a simple, unexpected meeting during a parent-teacher conference at my kids' school. Mary was one of Isabella's teachers, and as soon as we started talking, I noticed her warmth and genuine kindness. Over time, her presence began to fill our days in an unexpected way, like a soft light in a dark room. Mary was a widow with a son, Caleb, who was the same age as Paul. Having both experienced loss, she understood the quiet struggles I faced better than anyone else. That connection became a lifeline for Paul, who found a confidant in Caleb. They bonded over shared challenges, becoming more like brothers than friends. For Paul, who had held so much inside since Rachel's departure, that bond was something I could never provide on my own. It helped him heal in ways I couldn't, giving him back a piece of his childhood. Mary wasn't just kind. She was patient, resilient, and selfless. She never tried to rush anything or replace what had been lost. She simply let herself become part of our lives in a natural and unforced way. Most importantly, she understood that my kids were my entire world, and she embraced that. It wasn't long before Isabella started slipping little drawings of Mary into her schoolwork, calling her Ms. Mary, in the same affectionate tone she once reserved for her mom. Watching them connect melted my heart and reminded me that maybe, just maybe, we could find happiness again. It took a long time for me to feel ready to take the next step. I was terrified of failing my kids and risking more heartbreak. But with Mary, Everything felt steady and safe, as if life had handed me a second chance I didn't even know I deserved. When I finally proposed, it was simple but heartfelt. Paul and Isabella were just as excited as I was, already calling her Mom in their own time. 2 years later, Mary and I got married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. Caleb stood beside Paul as his best man, while Isabella beamed as she walked down the aisle with us. It was the happiest day of my life, not just because I'd found love again, but because I saw my kids smiling like they hadn't in years. Mary didn't just become my wife. She became the mother my kids needed. She never tried to erase Rachel's memory, but instead focused on building something new. We moved into her home, which was larger and had plenty of space for all of us. Her house, once quiet and lonely, quickly filled with laughter, late-night movie marathons, and the chaos of 3 teenagers. In no time, we became a real family. Then, on an ordinary day out of nowhere, Rachel showed up. I was in the yard with Mary and the kids, now teenagers, when the doorbell rang. I opened the door and froze. There she was, a woman I barely recognized, standing nervously on my porch. "Hi, Mike. It's been a long time. I needed to see you," she said hesitantly. Rachel explained that she had gone to our old house, and someone had given her our address. I stood there, silent, unsure of what to say. The woman who had abandoned us was now standing before me, as if she were an old friend dropping by for coffee. Against my better judgment, I let her in. Mary, though clearly uncomfortable, stayed calm. Rachel met Paul and Isabella in the yard, but it was painfully awkward. Paul looked at her like she was a stranger, and Isabella, who had no memory of her, just watched curiously. When Rachel tried to hug them, they pulled away and ran to Mary. Rachel cried, apologizing over and over, but the kids didn't know how to respond. After that day, Rachel started visiting more often, trying to reconnect with the kids. Paul, now 17, wanted nothing to do with her. "She abandoned us, Dad," he said. "Why does she think she can just come back like nothing happened?" Isabella, though younger, kept her distance too, especially since she could sense how upset it made Mary whenever Rachel was mentioned. To make matters worse, Rachel began crossing boundaries. She started trying to get close to me in ways that weren't appropriate, even suggesting we get back together. I had to call the police multiple times because she would show up unannounced, causing scenes at our gate. She claimed she was lonely, that she missed her family, and even said she wanted to fix things. Mary, who had handled everything with grace and patience, started feeling threatened, and I couldn't blame her. Rachel was persistent, manipulative, and knew exactly how to create doubt. For a time, I feared my marriage wouldn't survive the turmoil, but thankfully, the bond Mary and I had built was strong enough to endure. When Rachel finally realized she couldn't tear us apart, she disappeared again. This time, her absence was a relief for all of us. My family moved on and my kids thrived. Paul is now in college and Isabella will graduate high school next year. Looking back, I can see how these struggles shaped me into the man I am today. I think about Rachel occasionally and everything she did. While she caused me immense pain, I believe the suffering she brought upon herself is far greater. If you have a similar story, share it with us in the comments if you'd like me to narrate it. Thank you for watching until the end. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you next time.